Welcome to Patrick's Scale Studio. My name is Patrick. I'll be your host. So this is going to be build video 1 for Verifier's 1/350th scale USS Missouri. I'll be modeling her in 1945 following the surrender of the Japanese and her return to the United States. I've already put out a kit review for the kit and the detail upset because I did buy them separately. The local hobby store only had the basic version of USS Missouri, and I wanted to put a lot of extra detail into it, so I went ahead and got the detail upset. So go ahead and go over some brief things we're going to cover here in this video, and mainly it's going to be dealing with getting this hull ready to go. We've got these pieces right here that are sandwiched in between the two hull halves, and they kind of help add a little bit of rigidity to this. Otherwise, you can see we'd be able to flex these in even after we got everything glued together. So besides those, we've also got the anchors here, and then we've got the propellers and the propeller shafts and their mounts, and then the two rudders right here. With the detail upset, right here is the picture of it, they include these little plates right here, and I believe these are rivet plates for the armor belt. I could be mistaken, and if I am, please let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on these a bit. Alright, so you can see they're not very large pieces of brass. Put those aside right now, and you get 2 rows of 23 of the larger ones and 2 rows of 23 of these smaller ones. Now on each side of the hull there are 20 of each, so you do have some extras. The only issue is because this drawing right here is not to scale, I'm going to have to measure out where these go on there and mark these. So prior to getting this actual hull glued together, I don't want to glue these on because as this flexes it might cause them to pop off. But what I want to be able to do is to lay this flat so I don't have it rolling around on me. And then I should be able to measure off where they are and put a quick little tick mark or something like that with an X-Acto knife or something. And so after I do get these hull halves together, I will be able to go back with good precise measurements and slap these little guys on right there. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so what do we have here? This is my initial preparation for marking off the spot for these larger, what I again believe are rivet plates for the armor belt or armor or something. I'm not sure exactly what. And I'd have to assume that since there's only a drawing of the port side, that both sides are identical. Again, that arrow going both directions also kind of lead me to believe that. You know what, I'm not even sure if there is any kind of a key to these instructions, so it might be worth a look. And no, I'm not finding a key to these instructions, so maybe it's in the regular kit instructions here. I'm going to look real quick. Since this detail upset really is only geared for this kit. Okay, yeah, it does kind of correspond with the actual instructions to the kit, same other side. So both sides are identical. What I did was I marked out the location of where the first one's going to appear and where the last one's going to appear with pieces of Tamiya masking tape right there and right there. As you can see, the one most aft starts immediately on this right here, going immediately down from the aft end of this fairlead. And the one right here, most 4 of those plates starts immediately aft of that fair lead. I just pretty much counted the fair leads here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Same thing here on the back side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this other side here as well. So I'll just get a couple pieces of, to me, a masking tape. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, immediately aft. Oh, I said aft, didn't I? And what we're doing is just making sure that it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly perpendicular. There we go. And this one up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what these little marks will designate is the fore edge of these little plates. Alright, so that's on there. Alright, so I'm going to put this aside for now and talk about this. I put one big long piece of tape right here, and that is going between those two areas that I measured out here. And I'm going to go ahead and peel that off and put that against a rule, and I will then divide the measurement by 19 because there's 19 spaces here, and that'll help me designate where each of these lines are. So let me go get that rule, be right back. Alright, so I pulled that piece of tape off of the port side of the hull, and I put it on the metric portion here of this 2-foot long rule. And I lined one edge up over here with a multiple of 10 numbers of millimeters, and left the other end down here so I could get the actual, like, you know, exact where the millimeter is, because there's no millimeter lines after 10 on this rule. So what that gives me right now is, that says 43, and I'm not starting at the start, so I've got 42, 420 millimeters, 425 and a half, 425 and a half millimeters. What I can do is divide that by 19, and that will give me the amount of spacing I need to give between where each one of those plates are, or at least where the fore edge of the next plate will be. So, be right back. Okay, so I divided 425.5 by 19 and ended up with 22.395, and that's rounded up, and that was 22.3947, so I just rounded it up to 395, and that should be close enough. So at this point, I'm going to take my calipers and I'm going to start measuring out on this tape that distance right there. Alright, I got some digital calipers that I've got set for metric. I'll zero it out. Oh, they're locked. So I'm looking for 22.395. Alright, let's zero it one more time. Alright, 22.4 is definitely close enough, so I'm going to lock that. At this point, I'm not concerned about the battery. That's locked. So now I can take this and measure out on my piece of tape all the way until I hit the end, and that'll give me the locations of where each of these go. Now, something I meant to bring up also here is the best part of this right here is pretty much there's going to be identical spacing here for the smaller plates below, and so I'll be able to use this tape measure pun intended, for both rows of plates here on both sides of the hull. All right, so let me get this stuff out of the way, and I have got my custom-made measuring device here for those little rivet plates. I used blue ink so it would show up easily on the tape and against the hull, and I also covered that in Scotch tape so the ink wouldn't rub off. And so at this point all I'm going to do is apply this slightly below the very upper edge of the hull half, and I don't have to really press it down or, you know, make sure it's not holding anything, it's not providing any kind of force or anything, just to make sure. And as you can see, there is a little bit of a gap here. That's alright, it's just going to happen. It's part of it, and as much of a little bit of an inconsistency as that is not a problem with me. And so at that point, I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife here and a quick little mark where each one of these are. So they don't really explain in the instructions how to put these in place or any kind of a distance or placement on where they go. Just a not to scale drawing of 20 tiny little rectangles of photo etch, and that's that. So I know where that is. I know where that is too. So now be right back. I can take this off. And the little plates all line up at the very bottom of this plating line right there. Difference is I didn't think about it, is I can't continue to use this tape here because they start at a different spot. Alright, so where they start, back to our instructions, is to the fore or the front side of that fair lead versus the aft side. Same thing here in the back. But again, the same spacing throughout because there's the same number of them and it's the same distance. So I'm going to go ahead and get things repositioned. I'll get those marked off camera and come back here when we're ready for next steps. Should just all but disappear. So with that, and that's both sides of that prepared. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and work on getting these hull halves together. There are two E sprues, which is odd. These are both E8, but the two E sprues are not identical sprues. You would think that would be if they labeled them both E, but they are not. So E8 and E23, just as it calls out here in the instructions. And pretty much all we're going to do, get the instructions out of the way, is kind of get things lined up here. This is the best way about it because these are not a very tight fit. And just kind of working my way forward. And in. There we go. Looks like everything is in. Now I just got to get the pins here lined up. As you can see, there we go. We're good to go. Now, if I put enough squeezing force on these, the seam all but disappears. I mean, it's still there, but you can't see any of the blue cutting mat through it. Up front, it's a pretty good fit as well. The back, it's going to take a little bit more of a squeeze. We'll have to tape it off and probably tack it as we go. But for the most part, everything lines up pretty well. So, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with getting this together. For this, we're going to use some of the white cement. Wait a second, I just caught something here. No, that does not look like it's a problem. There's definitely some flash around some of these mounting holes. I trimmed a couple of them off, and I thought for a second this was, but it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of tape. And we're going to start off by taping the stern together. Doesn't have to be anything super secure. But now we've got a bit of a pivot point. And we can begin. Again, remember, none of this is going to be visible. It's all going to be inside the hull, below the main deck. We'll never see this again, so you don't have to really go through any kind of big deal to clean up the parts. You don't even have to be particularly neat with the cement. Just kind of glop it on there. The thicker stuff has a little bit of a better working time. And then move forward. There we go. Getting there slowly but surely. Last part here. And interestingly enough, no obvious top or bottom to this piece. Which I find odd, but we will. Alright, no cement on the fingers. Alright, so with that, with those in place, now what we can do is go ahead and flip this over. I'm going to get a little bit thicker tape. A little bit more holding power with the wider pieces of tape. And so all we're aiming on doing right now is keeping these hole halves together as tightly as possible with just tape, just to ensure that those interior brackets, that trusses or formwork or however you want to call it, doesn't start separating on its own. I don't have to go all the way back because I don't have any of those parts past right here. So as long as the seam looks pretty good right up to about here, I can work on squeezing that shut with some clamping later on. But it being closed will not affect where these are. All right. There we go. But I do want to get one more piece right here. Alright, so it feels pretty solid already. I'm going to let this cement set up overnight so I don't have to worry about this coming apart. And our next step here will be to start to tackle that seam right there. So, be about 24 hours for me, second for you. Alright, so the trusses inside have had 24 hours to fully cure. These halves are not coming apart, even though I haven't done anything here with the seams right now. And as you can see, I kind of temporarily taped the main deck in place. This is one just to check for any gaps and fit issues on this deck piece. But also, I want to make sure that these were aligned as they should be aligned up here as well as down here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, now that I've confirmed that that's going to be on there, I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and we'll go about talking about getting the getting that seam taken care of and the rest of this prepared and ready to go. Alright, so I've gotten the decks taken off here, and some of you may have noticed on that one deck I kind of had a little bit of pencil notes taken there. One, I was just kind of getting a rough idea of where the center of the ship is. And then from that center of the ship, I'm going to go roughly 13 centimeters in each direction from that center, and that will kind of help me mark off exactly where I'm going to be putting the nuts for the screws to come up through the posts on this. So I'm just kind of trying to plan everything around this. And the main reason behind that is, if we turn this over here, let's see if we can get this in a good light. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up, but on this right here, it's slightly cupping, and so what I'm going to have to do is, while kind of putting some pressure on here, some outward pressure, or if you've got the hole right side up, downward pressure, and I'm going to have to put a little bit of thick styrene or something in there to prevent this from cupping after I get all of this glued together. Otherwise, it would just be all kinds of filler here. Actually, this might show it off. You just kind of barely make out what I'm talking about. There's a little bit of cupping right there at that seam. And I don't want that. It's not really like a lot of people are going to be picking this up, turning it over, or anything like that. And even if they could, it's not like I would let them do that. But that said, I still don't want that there because I know it's there. It is definitely a defect in how this hole would look if I allowed it to remain. So I'm going to go ahead and do is I have to get some thick styrene pieces cut, and then I've got to kind of work around where that center is, or where those posts would be. Not so much, I guess, the center, but where those posts and nuts would be. Just a good rough idea. So I don't put thick styrene plates around that area at first, and I can try to get this cupping eliminated. So as soon as I get some of those plates cut out here, we will come back and show you exactly how I'm putting those in to help out with that issue. What that'll also do is the beginning of the joining process here between these two actual hull halves versus just right now them being joined by these brackets or these trusses. So let me go ahead and get the styrene cut up. Be right back. All right, so at this point the plan is to take these. I constructed just out of some styrene sheet and strip some little T-pieces here, and they've got to cure completely as well overnight. But the plan is eventually here to take these and strategically push these into place, put some cement down, and then put some weight on it and let that set up overnight. And what that should do is this should definitely provide enough of a strength here to prevent any kind of deflection or anything like that, because it doesn't take a lot to get this to go back out. You can just pretty easily push this with a finger. So figure taking some of these, putting it into place, and adding a little weight should eliminate that cupping issue right there on the bottom. But again, these have got to cure overnight, and then I just got to put them in place. So what we'll do is let these cure up, I'll get them put in place, and we'll revisit after everything's cured up. Okay, so what you're seeing here is my attempt to use magnets. I've got some weights underneath it. You can just barely see them sticking out, but pretty much this. So definitely iron, ferrous, all that good stuff. Very susceptible to good, strong magnetism. So I've got these magnets. They came out of old hard drives, and the plastic's thin enough that I can put them down, and they are really helping to draw that in quite a bit. A little bit of playing around with them here, and I'm eliminated almost all of the cupping that we could see when we had the hull flipped over. So at this point I'm going to call that good enough for me. I couldn't find another very easy logical solution without cutting up a bunch of wood and blocks and everything like that and then having to clamp it down. So I think this is going to be the safer option, and there might still be a little bit of cupping, but that's okay. I can live with that as long as it's just not as bad as it was. So I'm going to go ahead and get these pieces glued up. This is going to be sitting again for a while all of that cures really well, and we'll be back to have a look at see how everything turned out, and then glue the whole halves together and call it a day for this section of the whole preparation. Okay, well, now that this has had a chance to, all of the cement has had a chance to cure properly, these are stuck in there firmly like a piece of the actual ship. And we do have just a little bit of a slight gap, but it's a very slight gap, and I'm not overly concerned about it. Actually, let me see here if I can show you what I mean. Get a light, and you might be able just to see a bit of this light underneath there. But that's quite all right. A little bit of cement will help close that gap, and a little bit of putty, if not, should take care of things all the way. The neat part about this is the magnets with the iron weights below it worked out perfectly and brought this into much better alignment, so there's no cupping on the bottom. So here's a picture I took that'll hopefully better display that. As you can see, the two halves of the hole there at the bottom on that bottom seam are not trying to push inward any longer. So at this point what I'm going to be doing is just taking some cement and running it along the inside of this seam. And I can do that off camera so we don't have to watch the boring chore of cementing this all up. And then after that we're going to work on getting the holes drilled and the nuts secured here for the stand, and that should wrap up this video. So let me get this glued up, and it's got to sit and cure for a little bit. Be right back. Okay, as you can see, I've gotten the holes drilled, the nuts fastened in there. This is mounted to a build board with the screw heads countersunk. So Next step here is going to be getting these nuts secured in place. And if you haven't done this before, it's really pretty quick and easy. I just cut off, no real exact measurements needed or anything like that, but I just cut off some little bits of square styrene stock and just kind of go in there, and what we're doing here at first is kind of just securing this nut in place. Alright, so kind of got that locked in place. Now I'm going to take a little bit of extra thin, just touch it around there, and the goal is to get that to capillary into the join between the ship's hull and these little pieces of square styrene. And this is really just to kind of tack it into place. And honestly, if you went back behind that and reinforced it with more cement, it would be enough. As long as you're not really, bearing down on this mechanical joint between the screw and the nut, or bolt and nut, whatever you want to call it. So we'll do the same back here. And for this one, you know what? Zoom in a little bit. Okay, so again, just kind of taking little bits of square styrene, putting it in there. And this one, it's not right up against an alignment pin and socket, so we can completely surround the nut in this case. And for other ships, I know I've used milliput before to really get it secured in place. I've used CA glue. And we're going to go with this method this time. So the lovely thing about working on the inside of this is we don't really have to be particularly neat. And the only thing we need to be cognizant of is not splashing the extra thin on the outside of the hull. And I think this one actually wandered off. It did. It wandered right out of place. So I'm going to go ahead and get them back up there, cinched into place. There we go. And I guess that, at the end of the day, you could also say that perhaps you don't want to put so much on there that it's going to go through the hole that the bolt is protruding through, kind of like I just did, because it could potentially wick its way in between the little foam cushions I've got sitting on there right now and the hole, and then create a big mess. But I'm not overly concerned about that, just for the simple fact is I still have a lot of sanding and finishing to do on the bottom. But for the most part, I've gotten everything altered on this hull, so I'm satisfied where it's at structurally. It's together. There's no cupping on the bottom any longer. There's no areas or anything like that where I can see light through this seam. So at that point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. And next time we come back, we are going to look at getting rid of some of these mold lines. There are, well, it's nothing really apparent on the sides, but on the bottom you can definitely see some mold lines. I like to get rid of those. I like to get this all flattened out and smoothed on the very bottom, and that is what we will concentrate and work on next video. Until that time comes around, please stay safe. Happy modeling.